The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com.
And bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar, pour yourself a cold one. My name is Chris Lanuti. This is the EP Podcast. 30 minutes of good for Evergreen Park and the surrounding area. The regular show comes out each and every Monday. It's always on demand, so if you miss something, don't worry. You can go back. There's great stuff that you may have missed. You can get it anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com. And since the high school football season began just a few months ago, head coach Jerry Verde of the Evergreen Park Mustangs has been joining us for Football Friday, an episode that is like a special edition. This one right here, releasing actually on Thursday afternoon to get you ready for the Friday night lights. And after a 7-2 regular season, Evergreen Park has a home playoff football game this weekend, and the coach is joining us in just a few moments. It's all brought to you by the First National Bank of Evergreen Park. Get over to 95th and Pulaski, that iconic building over there. They have some great rates on CDs right now. In times of financial uncertainty, a lot of times I like to throw a little money in a CD. An 11-month CD is 3%. 17 months is giving you 3.25. Their savings special, 2.5% on those accounts. And remember, with Total Access Checking, you get free ATMs nationwide and a $300 bonus with qualifying activities. They have great mobile banking tools. Check them out. With $100 required to open, you can never pay an ATM fee again. 95th and Pulaski, your hometown bank, the First National Bank of Evergreen Park, member FDIC. On Friday, October the 28th, you have a choice. Go see the Evergreen Park Mustangs, 6 p.m. kickoff, or 6 p.m. kickoff of the Halloween parade at 50 Acre Park. Will it even be called that anymore? At 91st and Rockwell, from what I can see on social media, the park is being renamed for former Mayor James Sexton. It may not be known as 50 Acre Park anymore. If you're listening on Thursday afternoon, the 27th at 6 p.m., the ceremony will be held at 91st and Rockwell. And again then on Friday night, you have the Halloween parade. It's only for Evergreen Park residents, children 11 and under. Also remember, trick-or-treating hours in the village are essentially the end of school, 3:30 p.m. until 7 p.m. this Monday, October the 31st. As for the 2022 road resurfacing project, by the time you're listening to this, everything should be basically done. All the asphalt should be down. The village has a punch list. They are making sure everything gets put back exactly the way that it should be put back, and they will not be closing the contract until everything is right again in the southwest quadrant. But the worst seems to be over. And remember, we are in the middle of the Evergreen Park Youth Department's annual coat drive. Make winter a little warmer for someone in need. Donate your coat between now and November the 30th. Community Center, 3450 West 97th Street, room 105, or over at the Village Hall, 9418 South Kedzie Avenue. They're looking for new or clean used condition. So much more coming up in the month of November. Once Halloween weekend is over, we will cover it all. And Frank Murray from the Evergreen Park Library will be on the next episode that posts Monday, anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com. Quitting smoking is hard, and Cool Clouds Vapor Shop right here in Evergreen Park has been giving Evergreen Park residents and the surrounding area an alternative to smoking. They have a full taster bar. They have great CBD products. They have a knowledgeable staff. They're local. And as they've told us here before on the EP podcast, they're not looking to get somebody started on vaping. They're looking for a way to get smokers off of cigarettes. Check out all that they're about at coolcloudsvapor.com, or stop in and see Reed, Bridget, and the rest of the staff over at 3837 West 95th Street in Evergreen Park. On the phone line with me right now, the head coach of the Evergreen Park Mustangs, a team that finished 7-2, 5-1 in their conference. Home football game this Friday. Can't wait for it. Head coach Jerry Verde. How are you, Coach?
Doing good.
I don't know how else to describe it. Just a big season for you. I know that when we first started talking on the EP podcast, I think you were coming out of the dark times where you had to have a weird spring schedule. There was no postseason. You were just happy to be on the field. And to just watch me personally over the last couple of years, you go from a spring right into a fall and have to adjust to that short preparation time. And now finally get your just regular season and everything set up, I think, probably the way you wanted it. And then to perform. Only 2 losses on the season. You're 7-2. You got a home playoff game. How happy are you? Do you feel good about it at this point?
We do feel good about it. You know, there's been a lot of program growth over the last couple years, and you know, the old saying, no matter if you're a player or you're a program, you know, you're either getting better or you're getting worse, and we've obviously been getting better, and you know, and it is about program. One of the things that I preach as a head varsity coach is that it's not just a varsity football team. It's a football program, and it includes every kid from freshman till, you know, up until their senior year, their last game, and even after that when they're done. You know, it's all part of a program. And in order to get, you know, have success at the varsity level, you know, you got to have the right coaches in place at the lower level. You got to have be having the players grow and get better. And we've been doing that. And it can be seen based on, you know, how we did last fall and then how it carried over, you know, to this fall, because the expectations this fall weren't terribly high, but we knew what we had and they were able to perform.
You played in a competitive conference, competitive division. South Suburban Red had 5 teams that had at least 5 wins in it. You performed really well in that conference. You go 5-1 in it. Overall for the season, you outscore opponents 287-145, and you finish off the season against Argo, one of those teams that ended up with 5 wins on the season. So definitely no slouch, but you go out there and you play them and you beat them 54-20. Tell me a little bit about that final game of the season. Another game that you win convincingly when I look at the final score.
Well, our offense is clicking, and it has been for the last 3 weeks, and anybody who's come out and seen us can attest to that. And, you know, that starts with Dejan, that starts with, you know, the offensive line, and then obviously the way our running backs have been playing, and you know, our receivers as far as, you know, blocking downfield, running crisp routes, and you know, it has come together for us the last 3 weeks especially. And we were scoring points earlier, but it's noticeably scoring based on, you know, really good performance and execution. And you know, you can score points against a team that's not that great, but scoring against teams that are competitive is a whole other story. And in order to score against those teams, you really do have to know what you're doing. And I think it's noticeable, especially these last 3 weeks, that you know, the game plan's been really good. You know, I've got co-offensive coordinators. Jason Findukian runs the offensive line and the run game, and Darren Yarborough is our wide receivers coach, but he coordinates the pass game, and then Howie Ross is our quarterback coach, and they do a great job putting together, you know, game plans and you know, exploiting what the defense has given us and really helping players get better, and that's been noticeable this year. There's no doubt about that.
Was the game plan against Argo just run it? What was the total amount of yardage you got on the ground? That was big.
Last Thursday night, we rushed for 366 yards. And,
wow.
And interesting component of that is Dejan's been a big part of our run game, and he gained 0 yards. He gained 7 yards on the evening. So, you know, from that particular standpoint, you know, the much of the rushes fell upon our two-headed monster back there, Antonio Clay Jones and Jed Ajay. So, you know, they rushed the ball 30 times, and they're the ones that they had 366 yards.
Wow. Players of the game? Is that what you would call them?
Oh, without a doubt. Antonio ended up rushing for 233 on 18 carries, and Jed had 133 yards on 12 carries. Jed had 2 touchdowns, and Antonio had 1. And, that's as good a performance we've had at running back in 7 years here at EP. And it was really, really, it was great to see. You talk about decision making, and running the ball is also full of decisions. Where do you cut? Do you read the block? And they were able to do that. They've got great acceleration, and they're difficult to tackle.
All right, let's take a look at the first round opponent. You have a home game happening this Friday night, the 28th, 6 p.m. in Evergreen Park. I expect Evergreen Park to get out and support their hometown team in the first round of this postseason. You're taking on Comer, and the only opponent, you actually have an opponent that you both faced this year. I looked this up, okay? So they took on Carver, you took on Carver. They beat Carver, who's in their conference, 26-20, and as I look back at what Evergreen Park did against Carver, 49-8. Do you take anything from that going into this game?
It's hard to take things from the beginning of the season and translate them to a week 10. You don't know how a team has grown. You don't know. Some teams get better, some teams get worse. We think we've improved vastly from the beginning of the season. So there's a lot of variables, in there that, are hard to wrap your mind around. But, we feel good about where we're at going into Friday. We have respect for Comer. We've seen them on film. They've got a couple really, really talented players. They know what they're doing on offense. They run some option. They throw the ball deep. It's obvious that they're well coached, and from that standpoint, from a defensive perspective, there is a bit of a challenge there. And then, offensively, they've had success too. We know we have a very strong run game, and hopefully we're able to execute that on Friday night.
From the beginning of the season, I remember the first thing that you talked about that you lauded on your team was your line play, your offensive line, your defensive line, but your line play. And then as the season went on, you start talking about your quarterback and his performance and how he's really come along. And now here in the last game of the regular season, the run game explodes for this huge game from your running back. So at this point, it would be hard for me to say that you don't have everything clicking right now, and that this would be exactly where you want to be heading into a postseason.
Yeah, and it's a progression. It's a progression through the season, and it's something that myself, this is my 16th year as a head coach that I've experienced. You end up learning the hard way that your team has to improve week to week. You need to be, that big improvement that comes between week 1, week 2, week 3. And then, you can't go stagnant. It has to be an improvement, from there. And especially later in the season, that's really been a huge emphasis for us to push harder, to not be complacent. And, and the one thing that this team, has really understood is that victories are earned. You don't show up on Friday, flip a switch, and then hope to win. And, a lot of people have talked, and we've talked about, that TF South game. TF South, finishes, 3-6 or whatever they finished, and they beat us. And, why did they beat us? Well, they beat us because we didn't earn the victory that week. And I've talked to people about the importance of that game. Yeah, we could have been 8-1, but you know what? We could have also won that game and then struggled our last 3. And because we lost that game, we were able to be refocused and really understand what it takes, in varsity high school football in Illinois, what it takes to be successful when you're playing good teams. And for the last 3 weeks of the season, we played good teams and were able to be successful. So we were able to carry that through and improve. And that's what it's all about. And then even when you get to the playoffs, if you expect to have any kind of success in the playoffs, you need to be better week 10 than you were week 9, and you need to be better week 11 than you were week 10. And, from that particular standpoint, we feel good. We really do.
As an interviewer, I'm tempted to ask you simply, how far can this team go? Are they a threat? But I know what you're going to do is tell me it's one game at a time. So instead, what I want to ask you is...
You know the answer then. I'm kidding.
I already know what you're going to say. So instead, what I want to ask you is, what does your team have to do? What do you have to see in your players here now in the postseason that will propel them deep into the postseason? What are you looking for?
Continued growth. I mean, that's what has to happen. You have to be able to continue to add as the season goes on. And, in the past, there's been times where we get to week 8, week 9, and whether it's because of injuries or whatever the case may be, like, for instance, the offensive plays, sometimes you have to pare them down instead of adding things. Defensively, sometimes you have to keep things really simple because you're at a point that that's all you can do. And for us to be able to be successful, we can't do that. We have to be able to add on both sides of the ball and on special teams as the season goes on because, each time you get past the week in the playoffs, whoever you face next is going to be better. That's just the way it always is. And if you're not better, you're not going to beat them. And so that's what we need to do in order to be able to get past the round one of the playoffs and to be potentially successful in rounds after that.
Evergreen Park, the Mustangs, taking on Comer at home Friday night, the 28th, 6 p.m. start. Get out there, Evergreen Park, and cheer on your Mustangs as they hopefully start off a deep run into the postseason. They continue to get better each and every week. Head coach Jerry Verde has got his team clicking heading into the postseason. And, Coach, good luck to you this weekend and throughout the postseason. We will talk to you next week.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
Another show is wrapped up. Another show's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. And then by the looks, it's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next week. And the nude is basement. And the nude is basement. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And it's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And by the looks, it's gonna be a good one. Nudi's Basement. Broadcast Basement. The Nudi's Basement. The Broad Basement. Slancha.
The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at the eppodcast.com.